Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Honig. We're just getting started because we had an issue with the login.
I gather. Always happens.
Yep.
Well, pleasure to meet you all. I was wondering whether we would
Well,
succeed. It looks like we did.
We'll do introductions in a moment. So
I'll be
that
back in 1 second.
you know where everybody's from, what organizations they represent, besides Waikoa, you know.
Hey, of
So give us a couple of minutes.
course.
Hi.
Para pagar la cantidad total del saldo que debe, más esto para hacer el pago mínimo de no tienen solo todo más que claro, teléfono. Por ejemplo, quiere pagar $58 con 25 centavos. ¿Puede pagar su cuestión? 8, para mi caso, los acuerdos de pago, porque ya es el pago. $8 ¿cuánto? Repetir. Disculpe, lo escuché. Para escuchar la información otra vez, más que una, para dar la cantidad. Vamos a ver. Esto de $545 con 46 centavos. La cantidad mínima que se necesita para evitar que se desconecten los servicios desde
Okay, somebody has the news on and the mic on. Can you please mute yourself or bring the volume down of the news? Thank you.
Okay, I think everybody's upgraded already. Violetta, are you
Good morning, Mary. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone.
good morning? Violetta? Okay, I think you're on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Dory, is Richard coming on soon? Whoops, she stepped away.
He's coming.
Okay. Because Joseph Kolinsky, our co-chair, our assistant chair, is going to be a little late to the meeting, so Richard is going to do some beginning minutes for us. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I want to call this meeting to order at 10:42 a.m. Sorry about the login issue. We had some technical difficulties there at the beginning, and I think we're all okay now. So I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves and what organizations you represent. Let me start with Dory, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. My name is Dory Garcia. I'm the Executive Director, ARC 16 for Washington, Inc., Treasurer of Waikoa, and a public member of this committee.
Thank you, Dory. James Bosley.
James Bosley, that's me. I'm on this committee, the Committee for Aging, and also the Land Use Committee on Community Board 12. I've been a member since the start of this semester. And I also represent, or I'm a member of the organization Up Theater Company, performing plays up here in Washington Heights in England.
I probably should have introduced myself. I forgot. I'm Mary Anderson. I'm the chair of this committee. And have been for a while, and I'm involved in other organizations that deal with the aging population. Richard, you're muted.
I'm Richard Allman. I was muted till Mary told me to unmute. I'm a member of CB12 and of this committee. I work for ARC Fort Washington, both as a site director and development coordinator.
Thank you. Maria.
Good morning, Maria Luna, member of this committee and member of many other organizations that I see listed here, represented here. Being on the community board for a little over 40 years now. So I'm looking forward for 2023, see what's happening within our community and especially on the aging committee. Also, I sit on the advisory board for the mayor on the agent.
Thank you, Maria. Who is listed under Blue Sky Timer? Don't know if they're muted. Ebenezer, we have somebody else on the attendee list that needs to be promoted. Elizabeth, I'm sorry, Elizabeth Urena, yes? No, Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Yes, good morning. I was
Thank
on. Yes, sorry. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Urena. I am a director at Golden Era, and I just joined this committee as a public member at large. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome to the committee. Elizabeth is a new public member for this committee. So we're very happy to have her aboard. Thank you. Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Carlos. I am the outreach social worker at Neighborhood Shop, specifically for the elder abuse program, or as we now call it, the elder justice program. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Alana.
Hi there, I'm Alana Dunner, Executive Director of Riverstone, who is currently under a crazy situation here. We've had showers coming down from the ceiling, so we're
Lovely.
all moved over to different places.
Oh,
Yes.
Liliet, could you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Liliet Lopez from Night Connects.
Thank you. Ashton.
Good morning. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks, Mary. I'm Ashton Stewart, and I'm a veteran liaison at MJHS in the Hospice and Palliative Care Department.
Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Miller I'm the Outreach and Referral Coordinator at Lighthouse Guild on West 64th Street for people with vision impairment and blindness. And I connect people to services.
Thank you, Lisa. Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Ashley, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer from MJHS Health System, also here representing Isabella Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing Care. And I wish everybody a very happy New Year.
Julie.
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Shuli Gottman, I'm the Director of Mariah Senior Center, and I'm on the Executive Board of WICOA.
Carol, I think I skipped you. I'm very sorry for that.
Oh, no. I'm happy to be here, whether you skip me or not, and second the motion for Happy New Year. And I'm a member of this committee and very proudly so, and also Program Director of Dyckman Center for Older Adults.
Thank you. Verna.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. This is Verna Arthur with NYC Aging.
Thank you. Violetta.
Hi, my name is Violetta Epstein. I work at Columbia with Dr. Honig at the Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease.
Thank you for joining us. Miriam.
Rabner, Outreach Coordinator and Cultural Sensitivity Liaison for MJHS Hospice and Palliative Care. And I sit on the Executive Board of WICOA as well.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? Except for our presenter, which I'm going to do in a minute. So I just want to wish everybody a happy new year, a healthy new year. And we will proceed with Dr. Lawrence Honig, who is our presenter for today. He's going to be presenting on Alzheimer's disease update. Dr. Honig is director of the New York State Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease at Columbia University and professor of neurology at the CUMC Medical Center, Department of Neurology, Aging, and Dementia. And we sure appreciate your agreeing to do a presentation for us on an update about Alzheimer's disease. Good morning and thank you. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning. Happy New Year, everyone. Feliz Año Nuevo, and pleasure to be here on Zoom. I guess it kind of works as a new world with Zoom everywhere, as you know. 3 years now we've been used to it. So yeah, I wasn't sure exactly how much time, but I figured I'd sort of talk to you for about 25 minutes or so. Would that be about right?
That's absolutely right. I was thinking about the time that you used for the presentation at the seniors exercise group at the Armory, and that will be perfect.
Okay.
So, thank you.
So I put a few slides together, so I can show you some slides if you'd like.
Yes.
I can share screen. And I was going to just tell you about a little bit about where we are with Alzheimer's disease, a little bit like I said at the Armory the other day, where some of you were. And so shall I share my screen or try to do so? It says I'm disabled for sharing screen, which is okay, but
it's okay. Ebenezer, you can.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
No problem. So it's actually sort of an exciting day today and tomorrow, because some of you may know that the FDA in their wisdom has deadlines, and the deadline for approval.
Okay, you can do it now. You can do it now.
I was just saying the deadline for approving or not approving the first drug that's proven to help the actual disease process in Alzheimer's disease is January 6th. I thought they wouldn't want to approve it on January 6th because that has other connotations right now. So I was thinking it might come out today, and it may still later today. But I keep checking the news every 5 minutes to see whether our first drug is approved or not. So that's a special day today. It just happens that it's your meeting day. So let me share my screen here and see what I can do, whether I can successfully share it. Maybe let's try this one.
And Ebenezer, if you can just.
Do you see a screen now that sort of looks like a slide?
Yes.
You see something? Okay.
We see it.
What? You see a slide with my red marker moving around it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit, let's see. Can you still see my marker now? Or no?
No.
No.
Okay, so I have to have, I'm going to be looking a little at an angle. I'm so sorry. So I thought I'd tell you about the, the breakthroughs in therapeutics. I'll talk to you briefly about Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and then we'll talk a little bit about the new drugs. So we'll just sort of, and if you want, if anyone wants to ask me a question in the middle, just feel free. I'm going to sort of, go through at some reasonable rate, just so as not to bore you, and to try to tell you a little bit of stuff. So, thank you for the introduction. I do run the Center of Excellence, one of 10 of them in New York State. And I do have disclosures. I work with a number of pharmaceutical companies as a consultant, or more commonly for research funding. So, and I'm going to discuss some drugs that aren't yet quite approved. And so I wanted to start just by talking about what is dementia, because I know this comes up a lot. And dementia is not equal to Alzheimer's disease, and Alzheimer's disease isn't equal to dementia. In fact, dementia is a change in thinking functions that's affecting a person's abilities. I think you all have a common sense idea that that's correct. I'm sure that that none of you, unfortunately, have been spared having either a friend or a family member or an acquaintance or a neighbor who clearly is having problems with their thinking enough that's affecting their ability to take care of themselves and to do work or to do things like that. Alzheimer's disease is by far the most common dementia disorder. So it really is the most common. but there are others, and we'll talk about them in a moment. And so dementia is kind of like saying headache. There's all different sorts of headaches, or psychosis. There are all different sorts of psychosis. So dementia is just a broad term, but Alzheimer's is a specific disease. Even within that, even when you have the specific disease, you can have a little bit of it that doesn't quite make dementia. And that's where you probably may know people who are told they have some cognitive impairment. So they might have the beginnings of Alzheimer's disease, but it's not really Alzheimer's dementia yet because they're not that affected. These things don't happen overnight. In fact, as I'll tell you, it takes many years to develop the problems of Alzheimer's disease. And what are the problems of Alzheimer's disease? Well, they include problems with memory and language, behavior, sometimes even movement. But in general, different dementia disorders affect different systems. And memory, of course, is the thing that we think of as really affected by Alzheimer's disease, although language certainly can be also. Excuse me 1 second, I'm just going to close my door because it seems a little bit noisy out. That's the one problem with Zooms. You can't control the environment. So sorry. So there are other dementia disorders, which I'm not going to talk about today. Things like FTD, which can affect language and behavior more than memory. Things like Parkinson's disease dementia, and things like ALS dementia. But I'm not going to talk about those today. So what about other things that dementia affects? Well, not only does it affect memory, language, and thinking functions like that, but it also affects things like behavior, agitation, aggression, wandering, depression. And this, of course, is where in the community it gets very difficult. If you see somebody wandering out on the street, it's pretty scary because you worry about them. But sleep disturbance is pretty tough on people's families also, delusions and hallucinations. So each of these things is tough. And of course, there's also functional impairments. So there's cognitive impairments, there's behavioral impairments, and there's functional impairments. People who can no longer take the subway on their own, or can no longer do Zoom calls. So there are a lot of different functional problems that can happen with dementia. The biggest one, of course, is loss of jobs. A lot of people want to work over the age of 65 or 70, and they start having dementia symptoms, they can't work necessarily. So what are the dementias just in terms of their proportions? Well, Alzheimer's disease is far and away the most common one for elderly or semi-elderly people. And Alzheimer's disease is over 60 to 70% of dementia disorders. The second most common one is actually something called dementia with Lewy bodies, which many of you may have heard of because poor Robin Williams had it, and it became much more famous after that. A lot of people sort of lumped it in with Alzheimer's, but it really is the second most common dementia in the elderly. In the old days, many of you may have been growing up being told that, grandma or someone's grandma had vascular dementia. In fact, that's very uncommon. It does happen, but it's very uncommon that people will get a progressive thinking disorder from strokes nowadays. Probably that's because of better vascular care, and probably that's because sometimes people were misrecognizing a syndrome. So then in addition to categorizing these dementias by disease, each of these diseases has different proteins, and I won't bore you with that because you're not biochemists, but the fact is that Alzheimer's disease has this protein called beta amyloid and this protein called tau, and other diseases have other proteins that build up in the brain. And of course, our therapies are based on the diseases that, on the proteins that are building up. Just to show you what the proteins look like, you can see here that these are what we call tangles at the bottom and plaques at the top. And these are the pathological signs in brain tissue of people who've donated their brain after dying to us to better understand disease and help cure it in future generations. And just to show you the statistics here, you can see that overall Alzheimer's is going way and way up. The reason for that is not that it's contagious, but simply that there's more elderly people. So as you know from being community board members, you know that the population all throughout the United States is graying a little bit, and even here in Washington Heights and Inwood, and people are getting older. And as you get more older people, there's more likely, unfortunately, to have these degenerative diseases. So when somebody has memory problems and comes to us at the Center of Excellence or anywhere else, to any other physician, what do? We do a history and examination, just like we do when somebody comes in for chest pain or palpitations or headaches or anything like that. So we do a history and we do an examination. Then, of course, we take a picture of the brain, because that's very helpful. We do certain blood tests. We also very often do spinal fluid tests nowadays, and sometimes we even do genetic tests. We don't so often do this somewhat difficult neuropsychological testing that no one likes, where you ask people hundreds of memory tests, kind of like when you were in high school. But we sometimes do that also. It can sometimes be useful. But more and more, we have these sort of solid tests, just like we have liver tests and heart tests. We have tests in the spinal fluid and coming up even in the blood that can help tell us whether somebody has Alzheimer's disease or a different condition and figure out how best to treat them. So let's just talk a little bit about the history. Many of you may remember Ronnie Reagan, and of course he had Alzheimer's disease. People argue about whether he had it when he was president or only afterwards, but of course he had the beginnings of it for sure while he was president, because it doesn't come on overnight. But in general, the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease are memory loss, facial disorientation, ultimately sloppy dressing, and ultimately, unfortunately, a pretty debilitated state. So those are the sorts of things that the neurologist or physician asks about: memory, disorientation, word finding, and such. And I'm just listing those here, so I won't go through that again. But overall, as I tried to mention to you before, it's a really, really slow process. So here's a graph where we try to graph people between birth and 100 years of age. Of course, people go over 100 more and more too. But the fact is that as time goes on in different people, some people may get the beginnings of Alzheimer's at age 40 or 50, and some people 70 or 80, and others at 90 and 100. But it's incredibly common by the time you get to be in your 90s anyway to get Alzheimer's disease. So for people in their 90s, for example, about half of people in their 90s have Alzheimer's disease. It's pretty scary because most people want to make it over 90. But it's a slow process that begins with buildup of this amyloid protein, then this tau protein, then finally some symptoms that we call mild cognitive impairment, then finally some dementia symptoms. It's a slow process. It doesn't necessarily start in this age range, because sometimes it starts down here and sometimes it starts up here. This is just an example of, let's say, somebody who got a diagnosis of dementia at age 70, and gives you an idea that really 20 or 30 years before they were having some changes in their brain. They just didn't know about it. We didn't know about it. None of us knew about it. There's a whole bunch of genes that are involved, and I know this slide is unreadable, but I think the main take-home message is that even while there are genes involved in Alzheimer's, it's very uncommon. Only about 1% of people, even in our community, have a truly genetic form of disease. So of course, just like hair loss or other things, or things do run in the families, and of course one can have an increased chance of it. But a truly genetic cause is pretty uncommon. Although it does turn out that there's a particular gene that is in the Caribbean Hispanic population, and mostly people from Puerto Rico and from Dominican Republic, where it is an autosomal dominant or truly inherited form. There's a fair number of people in our community who have that, but still it ends up less than 1% of Alzheimer's, even here. So that was really what I was going to tell you about Alzheimer's itself. Now I wanted to tell you a little bit about the treatment. So I just went through with what is Alzheimer's. It's a form of dementia, the most common one. It's usually not a single gene that's causing it, but it can run in families, and it comes over many years. So of course we want to treat it in every way we can treat it. We want to make it better if people have it. We want to prevent it if we can do that. There's any number of ways we want to intervene. And so I'm going to go through right now with you sort of the ways we have of intervening right now, and what's on the immediate horizon in the next 24 to 48 hours, we think. So right now, there's a few different classes of drugs. Can you still see my pointer when I rotate it on this screen? You see a red pointer?
Oh,
yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure my two screens were in sync. So there's the classes of drug include what we call symptomatic drugs, kind of like the Tylenols, if you will, of the nervous system. Things that can make people better, antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety drugs. And those are the only things we had till the 1990s. Then since the 1990s, we've had some specific anti-Alzheimer's drugs. Tacron is no longer on the market, but donepezil or Aricept, galantamine or Razodine, rivastigmine or Exelon, and memantine or Namenda. And these 4 drugs, some of them in combination, can be useful in helping out, again, a little bit like Tylenol, in modestly helping the symptoms of Alzheimer's. For the last year and a half, we've had this drug aducanumab, which was very controversial because it was the first drug that got on the market with the idea of actually slowing Alzheimer's. But a lot of people argued whether it really did or didn't. Now, a second drug that clearly does is the one that I was telling you about. Is going to be in the news one way or the other in the next today or tomorrow, unless the FDA does something very strange. They usually obey their own rules, fortunately. So I'm just going to go through these drugs a little bit. So, because some of you may be interested in them a little bit, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but you've probably heard of drugs like Haldol, Risperidol, Zyprexa, Seroquel. These are very useful drugs that help calm down agitation, hallucinations, and delusions, and can make people, allow them to live at home or live in the community where otherwise they might be institutionalized. So they're very useful drugs. They're very powerful and have drawbacks, but they certainly are lifesavers to so many people. Antidepressants also can be lifesavers. There's no, it's very depressing to lose your memory, and definitely helpful to have antidepressants. Anti-anxiety drugs like the Valium family, we don't use that much because they have just too much of a double-edged sword. They can be too, knock people out too much. So like I said, the class of drugs that are specifically for Alzheimer's that we had till last year are these drugs, and they have a modest benefit. They also have side effects, like all drugs. They can cause mostly stomach side effects, nausea or vomiting or diarrhea, things no one wants to have, but also can cause other weirder side effects like fainting. And then again, this is just the list of the entire set of drugs that's on the market as of today in the United States. This one's sort of half on the market. It's not officially on the market, but it really isn't. It dropped out. But these others are just different forms of these drugs. Now, what about new drugs? Well, this is looks like a Nepalese mandala or something. That's what it is over here. And basically, what it is it's a manifestation of all the different drug trials that are ongoing as of 2019 in this case. You can see there's a whole lot of trials. And of all those trials, we've only had now 2 drugs, the one that was a year and a half ago and the one that we hope is today or tomorrow, that have so far proven their mettle, that look good. But the numbers are going up, and you can see that here. For Alzheimer's, the number is this red line, going up slowly. For cancer and heart disease, been a lot more trials. So how do we do trials? Well, we start out in mice, of course, and in mice, these new drugs are very successful. We managed to go, and this brown means that mouse has Alzheimer's. You can see this mouse doesn't have Alzheimer's because it got the drug. In humans, it hasn't been quite so easy. But it turns out that this new category of drugs does remove the amyloid from the brain. So the red is the amyloid that's causing the Alzheimer's symptoms. And you can see that in people who are treated with the drug, there's really red here and much less red here. And in people who are treated with placebo, they have a little bit of red, but they get more with time. So that's what's happening so here, this is placebo, more with time, and this is drug, and you get less with time, less with time. So very impressive. This is, excuse me. This is an older drug that didn't actually turn out to work adequately, but it gives you an idea of what happens. The drug that is on the market, aducanumab, does the same thing, and you can see it pretty dramatically here. That I'm just checking to make sure my screens are still in sync. That after a year of treatment on placebo, the red is about the same, or even a little bit more. But after 3 milligrams per kilogram, or 6 milligrams per kilogram, or 10 milligrams per kilogram, larger amounts of the drug in different peoples, you managed to really remove that amyloid. And there was reason to believe this drug was useful, and that's why it was approved, but it really wasn't, the proof of clinical utility wasn't good enough. So the next drug, let's see, seems to be a little bit stuck here. Oh, okay. Well, this is just other drawings of this drug showing that it really made a difference in the amount of amyloid, and it did help people a little bit, but it was sort of controversial. It also helped what we call biomarkers. And it also even helped something we call the tau protein, that we could see that even the other protein, there seemed to be a reduction in it, the other bad actor in Alzheimer's disease, when we treated with this drug. So the new drug that will probably be that will certainly be in the news one way or the other today or tomorrow is lecanemab, otherwise known as BAN2401. And you can see that it has pretty dramatic effects here also. So this is the amyloid removal, that when people were treated with lecanemab, a lot of amyloid went out of their brain, to the point that most people treated with this drug look like they don't have any amyloid in their brain at all after 6 months or a year. Really quite impressive. But that isn't impressive enough. What we want, of course, is to see a clinical benefit. And that's what we saw with this drug that wasn't so clear with the other drug. You can see that even though it isn't, magnificent, clearly the people treated with lecanemab did better than the people treated with placebo. Better with lecanemab than placebo. And on all 10 different sorts of tests for memory and function and toothbrushing skills and all sorts of things, it turned out that basically treatment with this drug caused people to decline at a slower rate. It didn't stop the decline, unfortunately. It didn't reverse the decline, unfortunately, but it really did slow down the decline. And that's why we think this drug is going to be the first proven drug to be approved by the FDA. So we hope. And really, that's pretty much what I was going to say. I'm just going to put a summary slide up, was that in general, right now, the most promising treatments and the breakthrough treatments are these drugs that remove the beta amyloid from the brain. But that's not the only thing we'll be doing. Just like with blood pressure, you probably know people who are on 4 different blood pressure medicines. They're not all just sisters. They're things that are completely unrelated. Each one reduces the blood pressure in a different way. And or blood thinners, the same thing. We have different drugs that thin the blood in different ways. So just like that for Alzheimer's, we hope that we'll have the amyloid reducing drugs, the classical drugs that I told you that were just like Tylenols, that were sort of symptomatically helpful. But we also hope that we'll have new drugs against the tau protein I mentioned to you briefly, or that affect neurodegeneration, or that affect neuronal growth, nerve cell growth. So we hope to have multiple treatments, just like we have AIDS, or blood pressure, or blood thinning, or kidney disease. For most diseases of the body, we have more than one strategy, which we can put together to try to really put a dent in the disease. So that's where we are right now. We're very hopeful that we will have this first treatment. We hope to build on it and have a lot more treatments. So we encourage folks who are having memory problems to come in and visit our neurology department or our clinical center of excellence, so that we can help people understand what's going on with their brain. Sometimes it is Alzheimer's, sometimes it isn't. And so that people can learn what they have and be ready for the latest and best therapies, which we hope will be available for everyone and be safe and effective. So that's where we're at. So I'm really going to stop there then and open for any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Honig. I really appreciate your agreeing to do this presentation. Like I said, I heard your presentation, at the Armory, and I was very excited to bring it to the Aging Committee, because certainly this is something that we're all very interested in, and the fact that some of us are, getting older, we appreciate this information.
Well,
Questions. Anybody?
Who pays for all those drugs?
Well, aducanumab was approved with a lot of controversy. So Medicare said they weren't convinced it worked, and they didn't think that Medicare should pay for it, except under the umbrella of doing further studies on it. And that was fair, I think. Some people were mad at Medicare, but I don't think you should be mad at Medicare. It was a wise decision. This newer drug probably will first be approved in the same fashion, not yet covered by Medicare. But since the evidence is so much greater, and Medicare did promise that if there was a drug with better evidence, that they would pay for it with less restrictions. So I do think that before the end of 2023, I suspect Medicare will be paying for it. And of course, most people with Alzheimer's disease are on Medicare, and usually the standard insurers do follow Medicare. So I think there's a good chance that Medicare and other insurers will be paying for these drugs within a year or so. And of course, the drug companies also have special programs for people who might not even have Medicare, because there are, of course, people who, Medicaid, of course, goes with Medicare, but there are, of course, people who don't have insurance at all. Excuse me 1 second. I'm so sorry. I'm going to call this call to play back in a few moments.
Any other questions? Maria, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Oh, is he on the phone? Number one, I think the doctor is on. Okay. I'm concerned about the difficulties of all of us and having the difference between dementia and also Alzheimer. How early do you think that a person should be start looking into the possibility of getting one of the other? Is that based on the genetics, on the history of the family, or how do you identify? Because sometimes we act silly and people say that we are crazy, which I am, but I would like to know if it's the symptoms that I show is something that I should be looking at. I'm not waiting for the doctor to say or to tell me, you are going on this direction, on the other direction.
Well, you're absolutely right. This is a good question. It's kind of like with teenagers with a pimple. Some teenagers rush up to the doctor when they get their first pimple. Other people wait till their whole face looks terrible and before they go to the doctor, right? So the same thing with memory symptoms. Everyone has a different point at which they get word enough that they want to see a doctor. Of course, we encourage people to, at whatever time that they have concerns or feel concerned, to go ahead and get an evaluation. And as you say, some people get an evaluation when they feel perfectly normal just because they're worried about possible family risk, and that's also reasonable. So I think everyone has to judge, like I say, so it's just like the teenager with acne or a person with other problems. Some people, or people with cancer, some people wait till they have a giant lump, that anyone can see in their throat or something. Other people, detect at the first glimmer. So it really is just up to each person and their family members, of course, because sometimes it's the family members who detect it more than the person themselves. So it's up to each person when they decide they want to get an evaluation. Some people think everyone should be evaluated. I don't know if that sounds right. As you heard, this disease is a very slow disease, even though it doesn't feel slow when you're at the later stages. It goes on for decades before one has any symptoms at all. And then it goes on for decades after that with symptoms. So it's a slow.
A very short question. Okay, very short question. How is it possible that in a family, one person remembers names and historic issues, but when you are like 2 years old until now, and someone almost the same age cannot remember what happened yesterday, the day before, or something like that? What's the story there? Because it just happened I remember scenes that happened when I was like 2 years old. My sister said, there is no way that, you can remember that. And then, she, and things like that. So what's this,
Just like some people are Olympic athletes and other people can barely get up the stairs. Everyone has a different memory. There are some people who have very good memories. Some people have photographic memories. That doesn't.
But also, doctor, the other thing also, just to, and And then don't remember the names of people that we have seen like the week before or a few days before.
Well,
So,
that sounds worrisome. So when people
Okay.
have that sort of symptom,
All
that
right.
makes you want, particularly if they used to be able to remember it, it's really a change. If you never could remember names and you still can't remember names, well, then that's not a change. But if somebody had pretty decent memory for names, even if it wasn't great, and now they're forgetting names, then of course that's a sign that maybe something's happening to their brain, like maybe Alzheimer's or something.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to ask if Dr. Honig, either you or Maggie, who I see is on the call, or Violetta can put in the Q&A where we can sign up to get tested.
Sure, I think, yeah, Maggie is officially off today, but I know she joined us. I can try to put it in the Q&A. I don't know.
I'm typing it in, Dr. Honig. It's okay.
You're typing it in, okay,
Yeah.
great, okay. So we have a phone number that Maggie answers. She's the our chief coordinator and in control of the flow of requests. So she's terrific, and she'll put her phone number in there. And of course we do. Yeah, that's the phone number. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And if she can't help you directly, she can send you to one of the other scheduling groups here at Columbia, which is very knowledgeable.
Okay, thank you for that information. Ashton.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for the presentation, Dr. Honig. I don't know if you caught earlier, I work with aging veterans and their families who are in our hospice program at MGHS. And oftentimes PTSD is an issue. Sometimes it's been repressed for a lifetime and just starts to resurface at this time of their lives. And it's oftentimes complicated by Alzheimer's and dementia. So wondering if you could address that and just maybe talk about some of the connections and how we can make sure we're giving the best care to those patients.
Well, that's a fascinating issue, and it was an issue for many of us in the dementia specialist community. We had a large national study, which we still have going on for the last 20 years, called the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative. And at one point, a side project of that was done with the Department of Defense to exactly look at this question about what the relationship was between trauma and PTSD in veterans and Alzheimer's changes. And actually, the answer was we actually have answers already. That project lasted about 6-7 years and then did fold because it actually came up with an answer, which is that actually the good news is that PTSD doesn't make you more likely to have Alzheimer's disease, but doesn't mean you're protected from it either. So a lot of times people get confused because they have the PTSD or they've had their brain trauma, but now in addition to that, they're getting the beginnings of Alzheimer's disease. So that's also happening in the AIDS community, for example, also, that people are confused, is it from AIDS or is it because they're getting Alzheimer's on top of the HIV infection they've had for decades? So unfortunately, anyone can get Alzheimer's disease, and it does not seem that either AIDS, for example, for that example, but on the veteran side, it really doesn't seem that either PTSD or trauma, like concussion injuries or shock injuries, that those cause the Alzheimer's changes. So that's the good news. Is that but the bad news is if you're getting memory problems, you still have a problem, but the good news is it's not related to exposure.
Could you name that study again one more time, please?
It was called DOD ADNI, Department of Defense ADNI, Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. James.
I think Carol also had a question.
Hi, Doctor. Thank you. I'm just wondering, every year we go for an annual physical. Every couple of years we go for a colonoscopy. We get a regular dental checkup. I'm wondering if I see a future when having this kind of dementia examination will just be a routine thing that we do every year or so.
Well, Medicare was thinking along the same lines, and they actually created a special code for an annual sort of wellness examination. You may remember a few years ago. I think it was during the Obama era. And not that many people use it, but it's sort of a controversial question. It's kind of like screening for cancer when you're 20 years old. I mean, so it's hard to know whether we should be, we should certainly be attentive to memory problems, but on the other hand, do we have to take every healthy 60-year-old and ask them a bunch of memory questions? Probably not. But it really is an interesting question, and one that hasn't been fully settled. Medicare did say they would pay for it if you do it. So for people over the age of 65 who are getting Medicare, it can be done for free. It's covered a Medicare service once a year. But on the other hand, the insurers have mostly gone along with that also, the other private insurers. But nonetheless, I'm not sure. Might give us too much business also.
Thank you.
Okay, Carol, you have a question? Yes.
You commented on the relationship between certain diseases, but I'm wondering about, has anything been touched on about COVID and Alzheimer's or dementia?
Yeah, that was an extremely popular topic a couple of years ago when COVID was first, running through our neighborhoods. There's been a lot of interest in that, just like like PTSD. And we do know that COVID can really, do a number on people's brains. And there have been even reports that some of the Alzheimer's proteins may change during acute COVID infection, like when people are in the ICU. But overall, it doesn't look like COVID causes Alzheimer's disease. It does look like a lot of people notice memory loss after COVID because it kind of knocked them for a loop. And we see that with other diseases too, after pneumonia, after operations, after psychological trauma, after losing a job or losing a family member. Whenever a person who's a little bit elderly is knocked for a loop, psychologically or medically, we do find that it's more likely that they'll notice their memory problems. So we don't think it's that it created the memory problems. We rather think it is that they've been knocked off balance, kind of like putting bad, water in your gas tank in this sort of weather. It makes your car not run so well.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Seeing no additional hands, I want to thank you, Dr. Honig, for this very important presentation. And I'm sure that we will run into each other again at some point in the future. And, perhaps there will be a time for further updates.
Absolutely. Be a pleasure and honor.
All right. Thank you again. You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
You're welcome to stay on the meeting if you like, but I know that you're a busy man, so you may need to log off. So it's your choice.
Okay, I think I would love to stay on, but it does sound like I'm being pursued in a few different electronic devices here, so I better.
All right.
So have a great day. Thank you all for asking such excellent questions, and of course, it'd be a great pleasure to talk with you again.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Violetta and Maggie. I appreciate everything. Maggie, I'll see you soon. Okay. Let me move the agenda. Speaking just a little bit about speakers and presentations, I have ready for the February meeting. I have update on COVID. I have Pauline Ferrante from the Department of Health agreeing to present. I'm trying to get representation from the Ryan Clinic folks to add to that presentation, in terms of the medical aspect. So I'm waiting for a response from Ryan. So hopefully that will work out. But in any case, we'll have the COVID presentation for February. Any other issues around speakers and presentations? Or we can save it for,
Mary, aren't we also, or am I confusing this with Waikoa?
yeah,
Ashton's presentation, right?
that'll be with Waikoa.
That's Waikoa, thank you.
Yeah, it was already done for us, so that's for
I
Waikoa.
couldn't remember the order because you're involved with both, so
I know. Tell me about it. I have two lists going, one with Waikoa and one with the Asian Committee, finding speakers for the future months for each of them. So,
we thank you for that.
okay.
Mary, this is Maria.
Yeah.
Looking at listening to the presentation by the doctor and the experiences that most of our seniors have, especially those that have home attendant, and a way of maybe that the people who train the home attendant could be on the lookout for changes on behavior of the people that they are taking care of, so they could be alerted to, a future situation, either with dementia or Alzheimer. Because we have seen situation where the home attendant don't have the patience to deal with someone that has some type of behavior, and they don't recognize that that person is just, going into that new facet as opposed to the regular person that they take care of. I don't know if people are looking into that, as opposed to just going to the doctor and having been tested and things like that. So maybe the home attendant, the people who are providing the services, could probably be aware of some of the, as I said, changes and symptoms that they can, take care of.
I will see what I can conjure up about that. I'm working on also some of the other suggestions that people had brought up at the last meeting. A presentation on the Omni way for paying for public transportation. Updates on HIV and AIDS.
Mary?
I think I don't have the list in front of me.
I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, but we
That's
had
okay.
a fire alarm going off, so.
Oops.
Richard I know he was taking the minutes here, so he just stopped and he might take 10 minutes to come back.
Okay, not a problem. Joseph?
Yeah, I'm taking them now. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right, under old business, Maria, a follow-up from you, as you just put food in your mouth. The response from the DIFTA advisory board about the concerns from the senior center directors. You can.
Right, I checked. I think Bernard is also in attendance. We were looking of way of having the extensions of the food, the people who will take the food home from the centers, as opposed to having the lunch being served at a particular site. That program was completely eliminated. They are not going to be extending that at all. So the grab and, what they call it, the grab and take,
grab and go
is not going to be extended no more. That's eliminated, and that's the only thing that I need to report to all of you.
Wow, that's an issue. I don't know what can be done to provide additional meals.
They only extended it, they only left it to some of the senior centers that were approved in the RFP.
Right.
Those that were not approved, we cannot continue with the grab.
Maria, what is the rationale for that? I mean, DIFTA talks about person-centered services, and if person wants to take home their meal, what's the rationale for eliminating it? Do they say?
Probably they say, I probably forgot the reason, but I think that I have something to do with the cost, and also trying to get the seniors more involved in a social ambience as opposed to just taking the food and going and leaving without being also, that they should be aware that the center is not only providing food, but also all type of services that they should be taking care of at that particular site. So it's not just that the nutrition and having food. It's a cost also for some of the centers.
But the thing is that we're finding our activities, not all of them are people are coming. The younger seniors are more interested in activities than lunch together. So it's sort of counter what DIFTA is trying to promote. They are trying to promote people to come to the center, but younger seniors generally, from what I've heard, don't want to have lunch in a congregate setting. So that's what I'm just saying.
Well, that's the decision they made. I don't know if they're going to be reversing that, which I doubt.
Thank you. I guess it's also, an issue for those seniors that need to have an additional meal to take home so that they have dinner. I mean, a lot of seniors, not me, but a lot of seniors have, less of an appetite as they get older. But they need more than one meal a day to stay healthy.
Are they prevented from eating there and taking home part of the food that they don't eat at the same, or is that
how can you stop someone from walking out with food?
We cannot serve the same person twice. That's double units, and we are only allowed to serve one meal per client. That's why they stopped it unless you have it in your contract.
So, but what Mary is saying is that they would rather take it with them, and that would provide 2 meals as opposed to one.
No, let's say I serve someone in the dining room and they just want to take it home. If they have the Tupperware, they take it home. I'm not stopping them. It's just that I'm not giving it to them in a aluminum foil package take-home meal. I'm giving them a plate in their table and they do whatever they eat it there or they take it home.
Okay. Not the best plan as far as I'm concerned, but it is what it is. I guess we're all going to have to think about what we can do about the food issue, because, the food, even if people could cook at home, the food is so expensive. When seniors are on a limited income, that they can't hardly buy, anything.
What I would be more concerned is about that they will take it home with them and give it to someone else, as opposed to they will have that as their, primary food. And I'm sure that people probably will share, and that's the idea. They just don't want to go to a park bench and eat it there, as opposed to a clean environment, which is center. So maybe that has something to be looked into, and how to prevent that. Because we know there are people poor who maybe don't want to eat the whole thing because they have someone else at home that they can, share that with. But I'm just saying that I'm just looking at the dynamics of. But they were very, very serious about that. They are not going to extend that, and they said no, it's over, and that's it.
Okay, I just want to report on the bookmobile issue that Shirley brought up. Bookmobile was going to some of the senior centers in the area, and it's no longer happening. It was paused, stopped, whatever. I have reached out to our contact person. Shirley had also sent a letter to people at the New York Public Library, plus some of the electeds, to try to find out more information about this. I followed up with a letter, with an email to a lady by the name of Bianella Rivas, who is our contact person in this area. It used to be Danita Nichols, and apparently she's no longer with New York Public Library. But anyway, I'm waiting for a response from her. So I will continue to follow up on that. Julie, you have?
Yeah, I have a follow-up information that I received. I sent that email to several people. The person who reached back out to me, her name was Cassandra Innocente, and she made an offer, which it's partially helpful. It's helpful for the aging in our center, but it's not really helpful for the community at large. And what she said to me was she was going to offer our seniors the books by mail service, in which they could receive books sent directly to their home and mail them back, in which case I would have them bring it back to me and I would mail it so they wouldn't have to go to the post office. So that would help with the mobility issues. The application generally requires that a doctor sign off that the applicant is completely homebound. I questioned her on that, and she said, no, that would be a concession she would give to our seniors. I mentioned to her that the bookmobile is not just used by seniors, but it's used by the community at large. And she said that she had no answer for that. She was not going to offer this service to other members of the community, but to my seniors, she did. So somewhat of an answer, but it's still not everything. And again, it makes it still hard to browse. They can request the book, or the application also has them list their interests and then get sent things. But it's not the same as browsing books.
Exactly. You know, it's a shame because, you know, the library has been, I mean, you know, even the actual library building itself has been a source of socialization and, you know, utilization of other kinds of services as well that the library is used to provide. It's very sad. Really almost discouraging people to use the libraries at this point. You know, and certainly the bookmobile is, like you say, an ideal situation.
And there's really
if I would have want a book, you know, to get a book from the library, I wouldn't necessarily know the title of the book unless somebody recommended something. But, you know, I'd want to browse through and see, you know, look for myself, look at, you know, the opening page and see if it's something that would interest me, you know, before I sign a book out of the library. So,
Are we talking about newly edited books, or the books that we have? Most of the centers have libraries, have bookcases that are, you know, interesting books that people have donated to them. Or are you just talking about something that just come out in the New York Times, you know, new list of, you know, important books? Are we talking about that, or just
the bookmobile? The books by mail program is all New York Public Library books, so it's the current ones as well. They can request the newest book by a specific author and everything like that. How it will work, I don't know. I just now sent in a couple of applications, and because of the Christmas, New Year's stuff, they have not yet processed them, but they assured me that they would be reaching out to seniors. So we have no experience with how this program is running yet, but the offer was put out there. I'd also like to see an ETA on when the local branch libraries will open again, because it's been quite some time. And I think that there is behind all this is a staffing issue with the libraries. I think there have been cuts in the libraries as well. And I think they're cutting staffing, and they don't have staffing for the bookmobiles, and I don't think they have staffing for all the branches right now. And that's a larger issue, and that's a big problem, because our neighborhood is definitely being underserved in this regard.
And you will have to have everybody register with a library card for them to use, right?
You have to have a library card to subscribe to the Books by Mail program, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And for instance, my library card is expired, which I didn't even realize because I haven't been to the library in forever. In fact, didn't know that the local one was closed. So, you know, I would have to go to a library to get a new one. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, we'll continue. I'm sure Shirley will keep us updated, and you know, I will continue to be in touch with this lady and find out what she has to say. So just wanted to report on that. Our next issue, which I didn't get on the agenda because for those of you that are not members of the community board, we have a new administration that was elected in December. And we have a new chair, Catherine Diaz. And she has enthusiastically, I sent out to the board members and the public members, I hope you all got it, a letter from Catherine. One of the things that she requested is that the committee talk about goals for the next 6 months. And I don't know if any of you have had a chance to think about that. If you have, raise your hand and tell me what you've thought about.
I don't know about that, but Mary, but you as the chair of this particular committee have done fantastic work. You are on top of this issue. I don't think that we're going to have to set goals and things like that because we are already on that particular trend. So don't break your head thinking about, or everybody thinking about anything new, because I so far as you know, as I know, and I think that everybody that is on this particular call know that we have covered most of the issues. How much more than today's presentation about Alzheimer's that is so important, and you know, the information that the doctor brought over to us, especially to the new drug that is probably coming to be approved soon. So I just don't know what are the goals we are going to be looking at, but I think that we have to give you credit for keeping this particular committee on top of everything regarding to the seniors. And you know, and also you are linked to public you know, safety, you have linked to the health committee and things like that. So you know, with all due respect to the new chair of the board, I don't think that that will apply too much to us.
Okay. Carol?
Second the motion, but I have a question. Did we ever get an answer to the request for having like a hybrid with the Zoom? Because we have a lot of people coming in on Zoom. Did we ever hear anything?
The only thing that's happening oh, you're talking about the request for the aging committee to remain on Zoom. No direct response to that, but what is happening is we're getting a month-to-month, you know, order, you know, to continue the Zoom meetings.
Oh, good.
Rather than go into hybrid. So for instance, for now, you know, I have it, you know, as an announcement on the agenda that the virtual meetings continue until January 20th. So it's going month by month. By January 20th, we'll know if they're going to extend another month. But they've been doing it month by month at this point. You know, it's like the month-to-month lease, you know? So
I think it would be a wise move to put that as one of the goals, to keep that open, just like you're getting it month to month. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but we seem to get a good crowd in this format.
Absolutely. You know,
would that be
in the old and golden days, you know, before we started going to the senior centers for our meetings, we were having maybe 9 or 10 people at the committee meeting.
Yeah.
You know, the committee members and maybe a couple of people from the community and maybe a couple of representatives from other agencies, tops.
Should we,
You know,
that we'd like,
today we had 22 people on the meeting.
wonderful.
Some people have left, but we had 22. I mean, come on, that's, you know,
So what do the rest of you think? Should we put that down as a goal that we'd like to keep it as a format?
I think that, you know, yes, that's one of the things that I thought about. Absolutely. Richard.
Especially in the winter.
Yeah. First, my apologies for jumping away for about 20 minutes.
Dory informed us, so it's okay.
Got that.
Sorry about that.
Since I came back, I heard what Maria said, and I want to sign on to that, of course. And we are discussing it's priorities in general that we're discussing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Goals.
I think Maria hit the core of it, that things are staying on track. If we can work some further consideration of mental health issues into what we do, I think that would be a good thing.
Okay, address mental health issues. Okay.
And don't forget that mental health is also linked to the young people, because I don't want people to think that because we are getting older, our mental health is really going, to pieces. I think that by having seniors interested in reading new materials and things like that, that shows that just because we are old, or maybe I am old, that doesn't mean that I'm falling apart. So I think that goals are set. I think one of the things that Mary, you did, that is very important for our committee, is to bring, to try to get more awareness about the lack of communication by the seniors, that they don't have internet and things like that. And I heard that in some of our areas, they are going to put those towers. I think that we should be looking into where they are going to be located in some of the communities that are more in need. I think that they should be located as opposed to some areas that are people who have higher income that already have access to all that communication that we are seeing every day. So I think that we need to look into those. I think there's 4 or 5 towers coming up to the to our particular Washington Heights and Inwood area.
Right. Richard, is that a new hand? I'm sorry, hold on a second. James, I'm sorry, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. This is something I mentioned a few meetings ago, in which, we have these presentations and we learn so much, but then we don't disseminate it to the population at large, to our communities. And I'm wondering if one of our goals might be to find a way, whether through an email posting, or even if it's a hard copy, because I know a lot of our seniors don't use email in the computer very much, maybe a posting that can go up in the various centers and hospices, and some of the people on this meeting right now might be able to help disseminate some of this news to their clients. But I kind of feel that, we are getting this information, but we're not really sharing it in a wider way. And I'd like to find make one of our goals a way of finding what that wider way of communicating might be.
Okay, perhaps we can have a discussion about that at one of our meetings. Elizabeth.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of this committee. And in regards to disseminating information, I wanted to just bring to your attention, I'm sure you already know, 2 things. COLA it's already in effect as we speak for a lot of this, for everyone that receives Social Security. And what we've seen is that it's also taken a direct impact on their SNAP accounts. So older adults have been getting notices that because of an increase on that side of their budget, there's been a decrease in their SNAP. Just because I know the grab and go was discussed earlier, maybe that can also be brought up to the city and, in a retrospect as to that, how can impact. And the other thing in regards to changes in January 1st, there's a huge population that's already been impacted because of changes that were made to the Medicaid income ratios that were changed drastically over 180%. And I'll send you, Mary, Ms. Anderson, the breakdown of who qualified then and who qualifies now. So just to give you a scenario, someone that made, these are rough numbers, I don't have the exact, I believe it was $900 and something. That was the threshold for Medicaid. And anything above that placed you in the surplus world. Well, effective January 1st, because of major changes that happened with the Medicaid and the MAGI laws in New York State and have already been approved, that number went up by like $1,200 or $1,500. And I'll send you the exact numbers. There's like a graph. So a huge chunk of the population is now eligible to be duly enrolled Medicaid and Medicare. And for the first time, New York, very innovative state, 65 and older, undocumented, 65 and older, undocumented older adults are now eligible to be out of the emergency subsidy of Medicaid, but they are now eligible to be under the marketplace, so under the essential plans as we know it. But I'll send you all the information. It's kind of lengthy, but I'll graph it so you can just pinpoint the income guidelines that have changed effective January 1st.
Thank you for that. Richard, you have another?
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on what James just said because I think it's really important stuff. And I have two suggestions there. One, we are seeing, I think, with newly elected officers of the community board, that there's a great desire right at this moment to enhance the communication that we do. The first focus is probably within the board chairs and within the executive committee. But I think it'd be good to take the kind of issue that James just raised to the executive committee as part of a question of how do we get more information from all of our committees out to the full board and then out to people in the community. I think in some ways it's the same question. And I think we're at a moment where there's a lot of willingness to address that. The second thing I wanted to suggest is part of that, and it came from my experience just trying to take minutes in the first part of this meeting. I couldn't possibly do all the detail that Dr. Honig was putting out there for the minutes we do for the committee. But if we made it a point to try to gather the PowerPoints and things that give more detail, maybe there are some good ways to distribute those to the committee, to the board, to the community. And I just like to put all of that on the table as ways of enhancing the suggestions that James made.
I did notice that the new chairperson, and I did read her note to the chair, to the various committee chairs, and I didn't have a chance to read it very carefully, but I did see one item that they were going to institute a regular bulletin that goes out. I'm not sure what the email list would look like that they were going to use, but I think that's a great first step. But I feel like if our aging citizenship gets something from the board, they may not read it as much as if they say, this is the Committee on Aging or minutes, that it could be disseminated in a readable way. That, you know, maybe each committee should have their own little blast or bulletin that they put out. I haven't really thought it through perfectly yet, but I think it's something that should be at least thought about and investigated.
Thank you. That suggestion. Carol? Carol, did we lose you?
Muted.
Carol, you're muted.
Okay, I don't know, somehow.
Okay.
I was thinking, since a lot of our members and people in the community that we know live in NYCHA buildings, if we as an aging committee could get some sort of help for these people, in other words, if we could make as one of our goals closer cooperation with NYCHA and for the benefit of our members. I mean, it's very torturous. We've gone through no heat in our center here, plus in the buildings. Now we can't go and change the radiators, but maybe as a group, we could be influential on NYCHA to get some help. In other words, would a goal be possible to have sort of additional communication, maybe a speaker or two? I don't know how it would roll out, but that is a goal I think would help our community a lot. It's easy to criticize them. I'm not saying that these things don't happen, but to get some ways to be supportive of them and get these problems solved in some manner, some of the problems at least. That's, as a goal, that's my suggestion, another suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your input. I'm aware of the time and wanted to just close this meeting by saying our next meeting will be February 2nd at 10:30 a.m.
Gotta go a little early, excuse me.
Okay. Send Joseph what you have. And I'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting, please. James, and a second?
Second.
Lori, okay. Thank you. See
Mary,
everybody.
can you
in February.
stay on?
Yes,
Can you stay on for a minute? I just have one question. It doesn't affect anybody, but.
okay.
Bye, everybody.
If the Zoom will
Bye,
stay.
everyone.
Okay.